asked Patty to do this because, well, first of all, she's found something that is really critically important to her. Incidentally, she is are you a current lawyer or a past lawyer?
I'm an inactive lawyer.
Inactive lawyer. And you know about 30% of my clients are lawyers, incidentally. When you took the skills group, how many lawyers were in your group? Do you remember?
An embarrassing majority.
Okay. A lot of lawyers coming out. Okay, but that's smart. You're moving on. Okay, Patty.
Hi, my name is Patty deLarios, and I am an ongoing client of Helen's. I came to see Helen, I believe, in early, maybe 2004. My husband had died after 22 years of marriage, and I didn't want to practice law anymore. The fight had just gone out of me. I thought it was pointless. I hated it. I just couldn't do it another day. So I wound down my law practice and I closed it, and I came to see Helen. And I took all the tests and I identified my meaning magnets, and they were that I have to help people, that it has to be creative in some way, maybe involving art, and let's see, and I need to have variety because I get bored just doing the same thing. And my law practice was also varied, but it just had too many things I didn't want to go back to. So I put my law degree in my law license and went inactive. I didn't want to give it up. I'd worked too hard for it and paid too much for it. So we went through all the testing, and I can't remember everything that came up. I didn't review the findings, although I still have everything, and I still come to see Helen when I need to talk things through. But one of the things she said that identified was that I could be a writer, which was like a slap your head moment since my undergraduate degrees in journalism from SMU. So I went back to SMU and I took courses, and I went through the creative writing adult courses at SMU, the novel track, and I wrote a manuscript, and I won a place in a trip to New York where I could talk to editors and publishers, and my manuscript wasn't selected, but by then I was sick of it. I'd been writing the book for 2 years, but I continued taking classes.
What was the book about?
It was a kind of a fantasy. Suzanne Frank, who directs the writing program at SMU, said you better pick something that you're interested in because you're going to be working on it for a long time. So since my husband had died, I was really interested in life after death and all the books on it, and so I started researching it and reading a bunch of books, and I wrote a fantasy novel about it. And yes, I got really sick of it. So I went back to school and I started taking some classes at the University of Iowa. I went to the summer writing program. Arguably it has the best writing program in the creative writing program maybe in the world, or one of the best in the world. And met a mentor and started writing creative nonfiction, and I got published, but there are so many really good writers that can't make a living, and I needed to make a living. So I turned 60 and I started freaking out, and I got some plastic surgery on my eyes, and the doctor damaged both of my corneas, and so suddenly it became critical that I needed to find something to do. So I came back to Helen and went through some counseling again, and she gave me a list of tasks to do, and one of them, and I also attended some classes here that Lisa Duty, her assistant, her longtime assistant, gave on social media, and I started developing my LinkedIn profile, which, by the way, I have some tips at the end. Finish your LinkedIn profile. It helps you focus. It's very important. People, if they want it, people that you talk to, if they want to do research, they will Google you. Have a really polished LinkedIn profile. I can't stress that enough. So I still needed to find something. I had just about decided to get an online certificate from USC Berkeley in technical writing. But I kept dragging my feet. I didn't pay my money, I didn't enroll. I had another writing friend who enrolled in the editing program through USC Berkeley. And there was something I just didn't want to do it. My gut was telling me not to do it. And I read an article one day, I think it was online, about 3D printing. And my heartbeat sped up. I got really excited. I finally had found my passion. I wanted to know more about it. I did research, online research. The company that seemed most credible to me was out of Belgium, called Materialize, with a U.S. office in Dearborn, Michigan. And I did some research there. I was going to pay them what I would have paid. I had some money set aside. I was taking money out of my IRA. I was going to use for a technical writing certificate, and I was going to pay them to train me in how to use the software. It was $1,000 a day, and I was going to pay it. There wasn't anything I could find at any schools around in the area that taught the software. So I was getting ready to call them and tell them I wanted, that I would pay them for training. I happened to call. Oh, by the way, let me back up for a minute. One of the tasks that Helen gave me was to get out the word that you were looking for work. So I emailed all my friends. I called all my friends. I said, I'm looking for a job. I really need a job. My medical bills were piling up, and my IRA, I was dipping too deep into my IRA. And it's funny because these people, sometimes I couldn't get my phone calls returned. I had a friend, well, I still do have a friend that is CFO of an airline, of a major airline. And I used to be a flight attendant. I thought, well, with my legal background and my flight attendant background, maybe I could get a job with an airline. Wouldn't return my call. I have another friend who's a marketing director for a major corporation. Wouldn't return my phone calls. But I happened to call a friend of mine from college whose husband is in the IT person, and I said, Ron, I read an article about 3D technology. I want to learn more about it. Do you have any advice for me? And he said, funny that you should ask me about that. I just recently attended a TED Talk. Do you all know what that is?
Yep.
That stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. It was TED SMU, and they give talks that are cutting edge, people doing the most interesting things. I highly recommend it. You can watch them online. You can Google it and watch it online. But this particular program was in conjunction with SMU. And he said a woman right here in Dallas owns a 3D printing company. And she gave a TED Talk, and I became friends with her. I thought it was fascinating. Let me call her, and I'll call you back. He got right back to me. He said, she's expecting your call. I called her, and I said, I will pay you to train me how to use the technology or how to get into the industry. And she said, well, come on. And she said, I'm not hiring right now. She said, you can imagine everybody wants a job in this technology. I've been doing it a long time. Her background was in making toys for Mattel and Fisher-Price. And so she had been in it a very long time, way before it became more mainstream. Like, it's really taking off now, but she was way ahead of her time. So her office and her business is down by Fair Park on Exposition. And I went down there, and evidently she'd Googled me because I met with her and her one of the engineers that works for her. She has a biomedical engineer and a regular engineer and a machinist and some other people that work for her company. She actually has two companies under the umbrella of Van Dusen Inc. She has SculptCAD and MedCAD, and I'll explain what that is in just a minute. So we sat down at the end, and I said, I'll pay you to train me. And she said, You know, we're drowning in regulations. We're trying to expand and grow the business, and we really need some legal help. And if you'll help us with that, I'll train you for nothing. So I was thrilled. We had a 30-day agreement that was nobody ever signed, but I had drawn up an agreement, and I went to work there. And I have learned. I've been there. I never thought the people I thought were so smart that worked for the company. I really didn't show it, but I didn't really have the confidence that I was going to be able to learn how to do it. Because everything was foreign to me. The terminology was foreign. Everything was foreign. I'm not really an internet person or a techie person, but I can use a word program and I can turn a computer on and off. And so I was basically starting from scratch, but the legal part was easy for me. They needed, even though I had never done the federal work that is involved in that type of industry. And one of the part of the medical part is what they were really bogged down in as far as regulations and laws go. And that involved FDA law, HIPAA law, patient privacy law, international law, because we are expanding into other countries, and contract and corporation law. So even though I had never done the federal law, the FDA law, the international law, trademark and patent law, it was pretty easy to kind of figure it out. So since I've been there, in about the 3.5, almost 4 months that I've been there, I've filed patents for them, I've been through an FDA audit with them, I've filed DBAs for them, doing business as. I've made sure that they are following the regulations, and in exchange I've learned how to use the software. I can scan a 3D object, I can manipulate it in the software, and I can print it. So I'm here to tell you, you just have to identify your passion and be creative about how you can get your foot in the door and work for free, and if you can afford to do that, and give it your all. And people would ask me, aren't you afraid they're taking advantage of you? And I said, no, because I am learning, I'm getting as much as I'm giving. And that worked for me. And even though most of the people that work for her company are a lot younger than I am, I still feel that I'm giving. And the medical part, and we're helping people because we make implants for cranial and craniofacial surgeons. So I feel that I'm also helping a company. The medical part is not that new. They've only been doing it for a couple of years. I feel like that I am helping the company grow, and I'm hoping that I will be offered a job. I know they want to keep me if they can figure out a way to afford me. And although I don't need a bunch of money, I do need health insurance, and I need to put money back into my IRA. And I do need to live. I'd like to buy a new car, just the things that we all need. I'd like to take a vacation every once in a while. Yes, Gary.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, you have an interesting situation, but how long can you afford to stay in that situation before something has to happen salary-wise or what have you? Because a lot of people, I don't know how long they can go that way, you know.
Well, I'm using my IRA. Mm-hmm. I'm also opted to collect early Social Security. Mm-hmm. So I am living, but I'm not living extravagantly. Right. I can afford to be without a salary. I could go to the end of the year, and then it becomes critical. I will work. I think if they don't hire me, or we don't work something out within probably another month or so, because I'm still learning, I will start looking for a job
in this field.
But I have so many skills now, you guys,
Sure.
that I did not have before. I can, like I said, I can work in range viewer. I can work in geomagic. I can work in freeform. I can scan an object. I can manipulate it. And I can print it. And I also know the law that goes with it. So, and that's all that stuff I really didn't know before.
I want to step back from this just for a second to make sure everybody understands what you're talking about.
I will go into that.
Oh, you're going to do it?
Yes,
Perfect.
I will go into that.
Because I think there's some people here kind of fuzzy about what 3D
Yes.
printing is. And that's,
But let me give you some tips first, and then I will explain, if you all are interested, I'll explain more about 3D printing. Finish your LinkedIn profile. Polish it.
That's good.
Finish it completely. People that you talk to will Google you. They will look at it. Make sure that it is up to date. Identify your skills. Plug everything in. You can look at mine. Google Patricia B. deLarios, and you should get my LinkedIn profile. Just take a look at it. I worked really hard on it. I didn't finish it until, I would say, late last summer, because I started working for Van Dusen Inc. in about the middle of October, but that was the first thing she did. She looked at me online. Identify your skills. I have a friend named Doreen that I went through kind of the writing program with at SMU, and we went off to the University of Iowa summer school together. She's getting an online certificate in editing. She used to be a financial planner. She's going to use that to get her foot in the door. She's going to say, if you will let me intern, I will help you. She's going to try to get a job with a publishing company, but in the meantime, she's going to offer to work for free to get her foot in the door and to get some training to add to her resume, and hopefully they will train her in exchange for her giving them some financial guidance. So in that respect, it might behoove you to look at smaller companies that aren't so bogged down in the corporate, you know, the corporate.
That's wise.
Yes.
Right.
That are a little bit more flexible and need people, but maybe can't really afford it. It's like betting on a company, and I'm betting that the company that I would love, I hope that Van Dusen Inc. hires me. I think they want to, and I'm trying to show them, I'm trying to give them creative ways to hire me, which is one of my tips also. Number 3 is find your passion. I identified mine by what made my heart beat faster, what fired my imagination, what got me excited. Everything else kind of left me DOA. I mean, everything else was just kind of flatlining. If you want to learn something new, go to TED Talks. They have them locally here, they're free. They're like lunch, brown bag lunch, but you can also watch the courses online. If you want to know, if you want to learn something new, I know Helen does it, and you want to maybe get into something that's cutting edge. I wanted to get into something that was cutting edge, something that really fired my imagination, and that fulfilled all of my meaning magnets. And try to embrace change. I think life is like a wave on the ocean. Become a surfer. Ride it. Ride it and hang 10, baby. Go for it.
Right. Absolutely.
And you have more to offer than you think.
That's a good point. Thank you for saying
So identify your skills. Make it easy for somebody to hire you. Show them what you can do for them. You, at the very least, you're dependable. I mean, you're older, you're dependable. You're not going to call in sick because your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you. You're loyal, and you have a good work ethic. And all of those things, I think companies value. And you've got all of that over somebody that's in their 20s, in my opinion. And I'm grateful. And people like us are grateful. And they really like that too. And I'm enthusiastic. And they want you to be enthusiastic and grateful. So I think all of those things really will serve us well as older people going into into something new or back into the job market. Talk to a financial advisor. Find out exactly what you need. See, money it is, but it isn't of paramount concern to me. I would rather be doing something that I'm excited to get out of bed in the morning to go to. I would rather be doing something that excites me than making a ton of money. I don't care about making 6 figures. I just want to be comfortable and take a vacation every once in a while. And your financial advisor or your accountant will help you identify whether you need to go 1099 or W-2. I mean, if you're contract or whatever. I have told my boss, the owner of the company, that I would work for stock instead of a salary. And I could afford to do that through the end of the year, but after that I was going to have a salary. The equivalent of a salary in stock. Because I feel very strongly that she's going to get bought out. Or maybe we'll take the company public. So I could be very well set. And whether I am or am not, I have a whole set of new skills, and I'm happy in what I'm doing, and that's very important to me. Be cheerful, be enthusiastic. I know those sound like cliches, but my boss told me I'm a joy to have around. I don't get mixed up in the politics at work. I'm just glad to be there, and I think it shows. And before I leave, I go, is there anything else I can help you with before I go home? And don't worry about them taking advantage of you. Give with an open heart, and I think you will get that much in return. Don't be a diva. I take out the trash. I'll get people drinks. I don't care. I just am soaking up, and by doing that, I soak up what everybody else at the business is doing, and so I'm learning kind of the entire spectrum of what goes on there. And I think I'll be able to be in a position to help them by knowing everybody's job. I mean, obviously I can't do the machinist job, but I bet if I was there long enough, I could learn how to do it. And before you leave, okay, let's see. Love what you do, or find something that you do love. Life's too short to only worry about the money. At least that's how I feel. And obviously this is all coming from my own perspective. But this is what works for me. Does anybody want to know more about 3D printing?
Sure.
Let me explain a little bit about what it is. Is anybody here a Star Trek fan? Have you ever heard of a machine that they have on the Enterprise called the replicator? That is basically what 3D printing is. 3D printing, they call it 3D printing because it looks a little bit like a printer, although it's a $250,000 printer that we have. And they have print heads. We have a printer that can use about 6 or 7, it has 6 print heads. And we load up a liquid polymer resin, kind of an acrylic, that is mixed with a binding agent in it. And from what, and I will explain how it gets the image, but you load the image, and there's different ways to do that in a program, and then you send it to the printer, and it will make a 3D model. And our particular printer cures the material with light. And I have an example of one of the things that we make. Like I said, this is MedCAD, and we make implants for cranial surgeons and craniofacial surgeons. So not only do we do skull implants, but we also do surgical planning for doctors, for craniofacial surgeons that might need to move or operate on the mandible, which is the jaw, or the maxilla, which is your upper teeth. So I'm going to pass this around.
Wow.
Is there something
Wow.
inside of that, Helen?
I'm sorry,
Is there-
inside of this?
yeah.
Yes.
All right. And this is also an example of the very first object I made.
This is your object?
Yes, going through the freeform tutorial.
Oh, how great.
And I'm sorry that his arm broke off, his antenna, and some of his fingers broke
Could you hold
off.
him up for just a second?
It was part of the tutorial.
Oh, how cool
This
is
was the
that?
very first object I made.
Awesome.
So is this, on the medical side, is this basically for reconstructive surgery?
Yes. Well, yes.
And
People that are either congenital deformities or trauma.
How long, when did this start flourishing? When did it start? Because, you know, we've got all kinds of things. There's a Man of the Future Society now, Guy de Gaulle, he's a Canadian, and he's saying that we are going to live, you know, we could even live to be 600, 700, 800 years old because we are now creating parts for ourselves and will be replaced, can be replaced so we can live forever. So is that part of that whole thing now? He
Yes,
may be
they are
exaggerating.
some printers that print biological materials. There are some, I think in Israel, maybe Germany, there are engineers that are printing red blood cells,
Yes.
skin, human organs. There are some that print food. There was an article recently about a 3D printed hamburger using food, edible food. There are printers, there's one at SMU that prints titanium. There's another machine, I believe, in a printer in, I can't remember what country, that prints stone. They've printed a house with 3D technology. And the stone that they use, they are going to send 3D printers to the moon to make the moon outpost. It's a lot easier to just send the machine there and make the house using moon, and we'll ship the binding agent, but using moon rocks to print housing on the moon.
But I'll bet Mars will be next.
Yes, Mars will be next. So it is, I think I'm betting that it's the wave of the future. But there are several ways to get an object. You can scan an object into a program using a laser scanner. You can import a CT scan, which is what our biomedical engineer does, into Mimic software. And that's what she does in order to make a customized implant that fits perfectly. You know, they used to make plates. They used to make metal plates that they would put in people's heads. Well, we make an implant out of a material called PEEK, and it's machined. There's additive and subtractive manufacturing. What I've been describing for 3D printing is additive. In other words, it lays down a micron thin layer by layer, and that's how this skull was built. But there's also subtractive manufacturing, where a mill will you'll put a block of the implantable material on a mill plate, and the mill, according to the computer program, will take away everything but the perfectly formed, custom-made implant that would fit seamlessly into the skull. So when the hair is put back over it, it just looks like the skull. Do you remember a Channel 8 story on I think it was a soccer player from Korea? I believe his name was, I can't remember his name, but it was on the news not too long ago. He had some sort of accident on the soccer field, and his brain swelled, and the doctor had to remove part of his skull. We made the implant for that surgeon. So anyway, you can import the CT scan, and you can design it from scratch, like I did this little insect, this little Disney-like insect. And those, there might be more ways, but those are all the ways I know of so far. And I've only begun to learn. Are there any other questions?
Any questions? I can't thank you enough for this, Patty. It's amazing. I'm going to go back and I'm going back and get your file and see everything in your file that indicates that this is perfect for you. It's perfect, but
It is perfect for me.
I want to track it through your assessments. But you know, the one thing we have to not give up, people. Do you follow me? Don't think it's age, it's this, it's this, it's this. Just refuse to give up. Thank you very much. And I want to talk to you before you leave about the University of Iowa, because I'm going up there.
Okay.
I have a niece who is head of some medical department. She's a physician up there. And I'm going up to check with the hearing man about getting my ears operated on so I can hear better.
Oh.